Yo, how's it going? Alright, in today's video, I'm going to be talking you through how to 360 nose manual. Now, if you've never done this trick before, I would actually argue and say that it's easier than a nose manual, but if you can't do the trick, you probably won't see that. So my aim of today is to get you to that point. So, starting off, the most important thing that is really to do with this trick is you need to be able to 180 nose manual. Now, if you can't do that, that's the trick you're going to learn first. And all you're doing to do it is, well, first of all, you need to be able to 180. I wouldn't say you need to 360 just because of the whole reason of this trick is to prove that it's actually easier than a nose manual. So in that case, it would be easier than a 360 as well because you're not actually having to jump. The main thing you have to focus on when you're doing a 180 nose manual is just that you're doing a 180 and instead of pivoting off the back wheel as you normally should do when you 180 in this sense, you're actually just pivoting off the front wheel and you're not jumping at all. So by that I mean that if you look at the different axes of rotation you have on a scooter, there's obviously the rotational one from the middle here, which is like kind of what you normally use to 360. Then there's the one that's that way, which should either be a bride flip or a flip. And then I guess there'll be bar spins and stuff, but we don't need to get into that. So what we're doing in the 180 nose manual and in the 360 nose manual, it's also the same, is instead of rotating from the middle, we're going to be rotating from the front of the scooter. So, well, I guess for me at least, it's kind of about here when I normally spin. But in this case, you're moving it as front as you can, and that's what's going to give you the angle to actually lift up the scooter. Now, you don't need to be afraid of going over your bars, because even if you're spinning frontside or backside for this trick, realistically, if you're going over, your foot will always be going out, because no matter what happens, your foot is kind of the front part of it. So, I mean, you probably learn this trick anywhere on flat, so even if you do fall, it shouldn't be that bad. So yeah, so what you're doing is before spinning it, before initiating the rotation, you want to start counter leaning. So by that, if I bring the scooter to here, in this sense, I'll be spinning to the side that way. And so I'll be spinning to this side, and before doing so I would actually going to start to lean the scooter this way, which will then enable the scooter to spin around easier. So it's really, the focus is kind of, your whole body is kind of focusing on this point here of the wheel to get that momentum spinning, and it's exactly the same for the 360 nose. So if you watch here, so you might have noticed that there was almost like a magic point on all of, especially the first two, where I kind of got to an area where I'd already done the 180, but I actually kept doing a fakey nose. And after you've learnt the 180, that's kind of where I'd recommend going first, just because you've already got the 180 nose down, and by learning it this way, you're going to start to actually dominate the second half of the trick, which for most people is the hardest. So when it comes to the 360 nose itself, there are two ways to do it. You can either spin the well, there's three actually. The first one I wouldn't really call as a 360 nose, although I am culprit of doing it quite a lot. And the first one I'll go for is literally you spin just under or over 45 degrees. So essentially it's like a 90-degree pivot almost. Yeah, kind of like a 90-degree pivot to 270. So that one would look a little something like this. Whoa! Not like that. So although that one may intuitively feel easier, I would strongly argue that out of all of them it's the hardest. So that's the first. The second one, I'll go in terms of actually spinning the rotation so you understand. The second one is the one that I was almost doing accidentally in the first examples of the 180. And that is when you get to here, you actually start doing almost a fakey nose. So the rotation of your front wheel itself, when it gets to about halfway, instead of fully spinning a circle like this, what it's actually doing is it's almost going here. So you see how it actually didn't do a circle at all. It did half a circle and then did about 45 degrees in the opposite way. That for me, for most people, although they might not know that, I would say that's the easiest one, and that's probably what you want to aim for. So in reality, to do that, you're just getting the 180 nice and dialed, the 180 nose, and then just allowing your body to continue the rotation. So what actually happens is, for the first half, your body weight is spinning over the backside. Obviously reverse this if you're landing at front side. So you're spinning over like this, and then here, to continue the rotation, you need to actually go onto the other side. And that's what happens. So essentially you're going from toe side to hill side at the same time, at the right time. So I would say that the second and third method are going to be the easiest. And the third method is the traditional spin as much as you can and then jump the rest. Now, that's one that I learned myself to start with, and this one does consist of your front wheel spinning as much of the 360 as you can. Now, a lot of the times I see people learning this trick, they continue the spin for too late. So by the time they actually come to leave the trick and jump out of it, their body's still spinning. So you want to anticipate how you want to land, which is obviously depending on where you started off. So if you're starting off, it's good to learn tricks like this with lines sometimes, just so you can kind of figure out where you're going. So if you're following the line to start and you're spinning 360, then when it gets to here, that's when you want to jump, so you can continue the rotation and keep going straight. You don't want to be landing so much, you don't want to be underspinning to the point that your body continues it but the scooter's not at that angle. And also, like I just explained, you don't want to be doing it until when your scooter actually gets to that point, because by the time you leave the trick, you will have continued to 450. So I hope that makes sense. I know my method of teaching is probably different to the way most of you are learning. If maths isn't your strong subject, you could find it a bit harder, but I'm trying to break the tricks down onto almost a kind of physicsy level, because I feel like that's what it comes down to at the end. Like, whether you're a gravity believer or whatever you think, in that sense, another topic. I believe that tricks like this are definitely a kind of a battle between us and nature, or a dance, however you want to call it. So in this sense, like I said, it's all about the rotation. So the angle you bring as you start, the angle you follow as you end, all those sort of things will influence how you do it. Now, the last thing I'd like to mention is what you're actually doing with your body as you spin, as that will also influence the way you do this trick. So I've mentioned this in a previous video. Actually, it was a video of a blunt tutorial which got deleted because my hard drive broke. But in that video I was explaining the axes of rotation that we have to spin when doing a trick, and they're actually quite different on ramps. So I will do that video again at some point, because I love teaching people how to blunt, as I think they're a really good trick. But what it comes down to is, normally when we're spinning, the same way as I said there's different axes of rotation on the deck itself, there's also different angles that our body kind of takes when it comes to jumping. Now, most of the time to spin, we're literally rotating on this axis here, but for tricks like this, you want to be going diagonal. So if you watch my back as I do this trick, the first half is really focusing on kind of coming from here upwards. If it's front side, it's the opposite, so it's from here like that. and this will really enable the scooter to get that rotation. Now obviously if you continue the rotation on this axis around 360 degrees, by the time you get to 180, you're actually going to be pushing yourself back down into the floor. So I would say you kind of want to do the first half on this axis, and then from there, that is the point where you jump, and that is going to continue the rotation round and make it look fluid. And the final thing I have to say as well is if you're getting really close to landing this trick and you're not doing it, you've tried as hard as you can and you're adding 24mm 110s, I would suggest either getting bigger wheels or using a friend's scooter that has bigger wheels, as the more surface area you have in contact with the floor, the easier and more slack you can be when it comes to actually spinning the rotation. Now, I never want you to do a trick slack. I'd like you to do it as good as possible, as stylish as you can. But in this sense, just to get the trick down, it does help having a bit more lenience as to how much you can lean. As a lot of the time, even I'm finding with 110s, and I love this trick, especially with that 90 one, what happened at the beginning is I ran out of angle, I ran out of wheel to spin off. So the wider the surface is, the more area you have. So I definitely give that a go. Now again, like with most of my tutorials, I'll be doing a few more of these so you can kind of see it in more detail, some more slow-mo on that, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.